Okay, so first we'll do some quick introductions and then we'll get into the meat of the webinar. My name is Edward Shea. I'm the Director of Adult Training and MWB Support at Mass CEC. I have several of my teammates on with me right now. I will pass it over to Ben.
Thanks, Edward. Ben Christensen, Program Manager on the Equity Team for Mass CEC, and I'll pass it to Nitro.
Anitra, are you still on? It looks like she may have disconnected. Camilla?
Hi everyone, I'm Camilla Bacolod. I'm the Program Coordinator for the Workforce Equity Programs at Mass CEC. Lauren, Anitra, are you connected now?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, apologize for the technical difficulties. My name is Anitra Ford, and I'm also a Program Manager with the Mass CEC Equity Team. Lauren?
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren. I'm the Workforce Equity Fellow.
Thanks. I think that's all the team who are on right now. You may also, during office hours, meet Janelle Granham, who's another program director, or you may meet Jennifer Applebaum, who is a managing director of the workforce team. So just keep that in mind. So you're here today on this webinar, which is about the Climate Critical Workforce Training Equipment and Infrastructure Grant opportunity. If you go to the next slide, please. A quick look at the agenda for today. We'll go over initially sort of the basics of the grant. We'll have a brief stop in the middle for Q&A, which we'll be able to take 2 or 3 questions. And then we're going to go on and do how you apply. And then after the application section, there'll be another block of Q&A. And depending on the time at that point, we'll potentially take a couple more, but generally want to keep it short since this is an informational webinar. And we advise you to come to the open office hours, which we'll talk about later, which is a better space to talk about your concepts, to ask more in-depth questions, and just get to know the process better. So with that, next slide, please. So Mass CEC, for those of you who aren't familiar with our organization, we're a quasi-governmental organization, and we work to invest in the clean energy sector to drive the climate goals for 2030 and 2050. We focus on 4 areas in particular: net zero grid, which includes stuff like solar, high performance buildings, which includes retrofits and electrification of buildings, offshore wind, which I'm sure you've heard of in the news a lot, and then transportation, which covers EVs, the infrastructure behind EVs and electric bikes, other sort of clean transportation. If you go to page 7, there's a bigger explanation of all our target sectors. So Mass CEC, in this process of investing in the clean energy future, has the goal of also making the workforce diverse, equitable, and inclusive. While this particular RFP does not require focusing on specific target populations, we still do encourage you to consider prioritizing those goals in your application. And we have here on this QR code and the bit.ly in the blue call-out box a link to how the state defines environmental justice neighborhoods, as well as some of the other target populations. So moving on. For this training opportunity, we do have climate critical occupations in mind. If you haven't looked at it yet, we do have a big needs assessment that Mass CEC put on. And in that assessment, we've listed the priorities of occupations that have great need behind them, and here are a few of them. In particular, I just want to do a quick call out that in the state of Massachusetts, if you're training solar installers, generally they have to be licensed electricians, so keep that in mind if that is going to be what you're training for. You can see there's many other high priority occupations that you could target for your training opportunities. So moving forward. So Mass CEC currently is able to offer several different funding opportunities for those of you who weren't able to join us for the previous webinars. On the right in the blue columns, you'll see the equity focused opportunities. There is a recording about the equity workforce training equipment and infrastructure grants, which is on the website now. And if you follow the QR code, you'll get to the RFP solicitation, all the documentation for that. That's slightly different than the grant today. But if you're not sure of what you want to do with your training and you're still kind of in the planning phase, I do recommend you look at the workforce planning and capacity grants, which are rolling. We do have a priority deadline coming up in February, which will allow you to enter essentially the Mass CEC ecosystem, take advantage of our technical assistance support, which is slightly more extensive than you may have experienced with other funders. We do help you network and we help you figure out your planning. But today we're focused on the grant in the green column, which is the Climate Critical Workforce Training, Equipment, and Infrastructure Grant. So unlike the equity grants, again, this is open to all Massachusetts residents in terms of the training opportunities. In addition to that, we are creating an opportunity to do training of incumbent workers. So if you're looking to upskill individuals who need just a little bit of additional training to either pivot into the clean energy sector or grow in their career in the clean energy sector, that is a possibility in one of the strands. And we also offer ARPA funds for equipment and infrastructure, which does require a match under this grant. Again, follow the QR code in orange or follow the bit.ly and they'll get you to all the documents you need. So just a quick background on how this grant is funded, but also kind of an explainer of how some of the standards are set in there. A chunk of the money for this grant opportunity comes from the state budget this year for the fiscal year 24. Those monies have been designated for various causes, including workforce. While it is a state budget fund, because it has been put into an investment fund, it doesn't expire at the end of this fiscal year, which allows us to offer grant opportunities across multiple years, which you'll hear about later. In addition to the state budget, there are also ARPA funds as mentioned. Again, to call out, for this grant, unlike the equity grant, you are required to provide a match to the ARPA fund. So if your lead organization is a private entity, the match is a 1-to-1 match. If you represent a public entity, it's a 25% match. Similar to the state budget, there is a timeline related to this. We have to expend all funds from ARPA by the end of 2026, but due to invoicing and reporting requirements, we anticipate that most of the awards from the ARPA strand will be scheduled to expire by the end of 2025 to allow for that last year of reporting and invoicing. So who's eligible? We have a broad slate of eligible entities that could apply, but we will say that we do recommend partnerships. We recognize that this level of comprehensive training and the level of wraparound support needed usually requires multiple entities to provide the expertise to pull off the placement and retention and all the supports needed to make this possible. Some specific criteria, though, is the lead applicant does have to have a Massachusetts-based office, or the lead applicant must have staff in Massachusetts. In addition, they must be able to produce a COGS, Certificate of Good Standing, which usually means you're reporting to DOR, the Division of Revenue. In addition to that, we do have a conflict of interest standard within the solicitation that I would take a close look at when you're selecting your subcontractors and other partners. If you're hiring individuals or organizations that might present a conflict of interest, we simply need you to provide the standards with how you judge those conflicts of interest and select your partners and subcontractors. So moving on. So as we said, you do have to have a lead applicant when you come in with a partnership, which again is recommended to come in with a partnership. We're agnostic on which type of entity is the best lead applicant. However, it is important to keep in mind that the lead applicant will be required to deal with most of the administrative burden. So whoever steps up as the lead applicant should be able to do the bookkeeping, invoicing, as well as take care of the regular monthly contacts with the technical assistance provider from Mass CEC. So keep that in mind as you form your partnerships. So with that, we'll pause for a moment and take 2 or 3 quick questions and then move on to how you actually apply. So if you're able to put your questions in the chat, we will field them real quickly. And I saw one that already went through, and thank you, Anitra, for answering in the chat. There was a question about whether 501c3s are private or public entities. Generally speaking, we consider them private entities. When we talk about public, we're talking about like the K through 12 schools, some of the community colleges and other state-funded post-secondary institutions. And a logistics question came through. Yes, there will be a recording, and the PowerPoint will be posted to the website as well. We'll pause for, again, quick 10 count. Anyone have any additional questions that they want to posit at this point in the chat? And again, there will be a second Q&A section near the end of the webinar if you have none at this time. I see one hand raised. Jacqueline, do you want to type your question in? If it's easier to unmute, you are welcome to do so, but again, this is being recorded. Yes, so the next part of the webinar is specifically going to cover how we expect you to apply. So if you can hold till the second Q&A and see how that process looks. If you have any further questions, then we will help you out at that point. Actually, yes. Our managing director is on now. So Jennifer put it into the chat. It's a very important point to make. We mentioned the ARPA match requirements earlier. There is space if you do not feel those match requirements are in line with what you need to do. If you can provide substantiation for why your proposed level of match would be appropriate, we would entertain those narratives. Okay, so seeing no other questions, I'm going to pass it now to my colleague, Camilla, and she will take care of the application process.
Thanks, Edward. So now we will talk about the steps of the application process. So the first step is to review the RFP and all the different forms and attachments to make sure that you have an understanding of the funding opportunity and the different requirements that are needed for the application. And we strongly encourage applicants to attend informational webinars such as this one and use other informational resources that are available. And if you have any questions about the RFP, the application process, or if you want to discuss your ideas, please email those questions to rfpworkforce@masscec.com. And we just want to note that this rfpworkforce@masscec.com email is new. If you've been a previous applicant to our grant, you may know that we've been using workforce@masscec.com. But moving forward, please field your questions to this new email as a way to streamline any correspondence related to our RFPs. And the application process consists of different attachments, which I will talk about in the next slides. But we do have two deadlines for the solicitation. So the next upcoming deadline is on January 26th, and the next one will be on May 1, 2024. And those applications will be due by those respective dates by 11:59 p.m. The application packet includes a signature and acceptance form, the application grant itself, and a budget, which will be required to submit as an Excel file and use our format for the budget. And we also want to note that the sample agreement will be dependent on the strand that you are applying for. So we will explain the different strands in more detail in the later slides. We also require MOUs or letters of support from partners attached to attachment 2 or separated documents. And we also want to note that additional attachments will not be considered during the review and scoring. So please keep that in mind when you do submit your application packet. This is the general timeline of the RFP, which is also in the RFP document itself. We will be taking questions via the RFP workforce email through April 5th, and we'll be updating those questions on our website. And we do have upcoming office hours which will start tomorrow, and we will explain the office hours process in more detail later on in this presentation. Again, we have 2 deadlines for this application. You can submit your application at any time, but it will only be reviewed alongside the other submitted applications submitted by the respective deadline dates. And we expect to notify awardees by March or April if you submit the application by January 26th, and notify awardees by June 2024 if you submit the application by May 1, 2024. We also just want to emphasize that if your program proposal doesn't exactly fit within our selection criteria, but can still assist Mass CEC in meeting our clean energy workforce goals, we are open to hearing those ideas, especially if it will promote diverse pipelines to these climate critical occupations, as long as if you make a compelling case as to why a certain training program or an upskilling program will increase workers with those in-demand skills. We are open to hearing ideas, and again, we welcome you to discuss your ideas with us through our email or through attending office hours. And all the STRAND applications will be reviewed based upon the selection criteria, which includes the experience and qualifications of the lead applicant and partners, the occupations and the populations that you're targeting. The criteria also includes the maximizing employer engagement and making sure that you're using their input throughout the program implementation process. We also look for applications that have strong outcomes and signal sustainability with a reasonable budget and leveraging resources beyond this grant. And again, we're looking for unique approaches to training programs, and that can be also include, diversity in the occupations that you're targeting, and even diversity in the geographic regions that you're training people for. And this is the general timeline of the 3 strands that is included in this solicitation. So my colleagues and I will speak in more detail about the different requirements and goals of each of these strands. Okay, I will now pass it off to Anitra to discuss Strand A.
Thanks, Camilla. All right, so for Strand A, we are referring to the career pathway training leading to employment in climate critical priority occupations. The award range for Strand A is $100,000 to $800,000. The award duration is anywhere from 1 to 2 years, with an additional year of post-program monitoring and metrics that will be required tracking after the proposed project is complete. So you should make sure that your plan and your budget covers that obligation. As for match, there is no match required for this strand, but it is encouraged. And some of the goals that we're looking for with this strand is a comprehensive training plan that results in industry recognized credentials, a program that also incorporates wraparound services and case management to make sure that participants their needs are being met for success, and placement support into clean energy careers. Additional selection criteria for the strand as far as program design goes. Again, we're looking for that comprehensive training plan with strong vocational and work readiness curricula. We're also looking for training delivery models that embrace innovative and proven strategies to increase participant outcomes. The program design includes case management and support services tailored to meet participant needs and promote completion, retention, and advancement. And last but not least on my list is programs provide pathways to industry recognized credentials or licenses and or articulated higher education credits. More information on those program design selection criteria can be found on page 16. Outcomes. So successful applicants will include milestones that indicate successful completion for individual participants, aka off-ramps, as well as description of plans to engage relevant partners to provide off-ramps to participants. This is a program example that kind of indicates the type of work that goes into planning for Strand A. As you can see, the arrow for employer engagement begins prior to the actual program start. This type of work will be part of your application process in which you are getting MOUs from employer partners, and you will notice that the arrow continues beyond program completion. This is the work that you will be doing to make sure that the training curriculum includes, priority needs of the employer, and that there are outcomes that the employer can track or that you can track. During program participation, that goes from outreach and recruitment through intake, technical training, placement, and retention. And then wraparound services often start throughout the program delivery and will extend beyond program completion to help you collect that information for the metrics during the retention period. Next slide. And so now I will pass it to Ben for Strand B.
Thank you, Nitra. I'll be talking about Strand B, which is our climate critical upskilling for incumbent workers. It's the first time we've been offering a targeted specific upskilling for incumbent workers. The award range for this strand is 100,000 to 800,000. Similar to Strand A, it is a 1 to 2 year award with that additional year of post-program monitoring. So please account for that when you're planning and budgeting. The match is not required, but encouraged. The main goals are to create new and or expand career advancement programming and upskilling to help incumbent workers gain skills, to expand capacity and support the state's climate goals by having more workers in the field in clean energy jobs or doing clean energy functions within their current roles. We're also looking to establish and grow the wraparound retention and support services to ensure program success and that folks that are trained in clean energy jobs stay in clean energy jobs. Next slide, please. Strand B also has additional callouts for selection criteria, which can be found on page 17 of the RFP. Specifically for this strand, we're looking for applicants to present a detailed training plan with clear benefits to incumbent workers and participating employers. It's really important that you get the buy-in from employers so that they are okay with releasing their workers to go to training, and then also to get the buy-in from the workers themselves so that they're committed to completing. Whenever relevant, the training program offers an industry recognized certification or credential, and that there's a program design that benefits the skill development without proposing any cost to workers. And lastly, that there's a clear and imminent opportunities for workers to utilize the skills developed in the training in the clean energy space. Next slide, please. Some of the outcomes. So successful applications will be highlighting milestones that indicate success and completion of incumbent worker training. So this could be a skills gain, obtaining that certification or license, a promotion, advancement, wage increase, increase in the percentage of their work that is in clean energy. Those are all could be considered acceptable success indicators. We'd like to see that there's description of employers' involvement in the training program as it pertains to recruiting and employee supports. And then we would want to see letters of support from at least 2 partners. So this could be if it's an employer that's applying, like the training providers that will be providing. If it's a training provider that's applying for a grant, are you getting letters of support from employers showing that yes, they're committed and that they will release their workers so that they can take this training? We do have a grantee right now that is doing some incumbent worker and upskilling, and they're providing wraparound support services like lodging and food so that folks that are traveling from other parts of the state can get to the training center in Central Mass. And if it's a week-long training they're coming from North Adams, that there's lodging and those supports available to them while they're in the training. And next slide. And I'll pass it back to Camilla to talk a little bit about the infrastructure strand.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So Strand C is the equipment and infrastructure to support climate critical training, and this strand provides funding for equipment used by the training participants and the infrastructure that needs to be built to host a training program. The award range for the strand is $50,000 to $750,000 with a duration of a year to an 18-month award. And this Strand C funding is expended from ARPA, which Edward has mentioned in the beginning of this presentation. So match is required if you're submitting a proposal for equipment and infrastructure. Again, it's a one-to-one match for private entities and a minimum of 25% match for public entities. Since it will need to be expended by December 31, prior to December 31, 2026, awarded Strand C funds, the contracts for those awards will largely end by the year prior of December 31, 2025. Applications for the equipment and infrastructure funding will be reviewed through additional selection criteria according to the impact that the added equipment and infrastructure will have on your training program. And this includes the outcomes of the expanding training offerings as a result of the added funding that allows more students to enroll or participate in your training program that will lead to the addition or improvement of those in-demand climate critical skills. And in this application, we are looking for outcomes that will result in added capacity for your program. So next slide, please. Again, we are looking for proposals that will add those added capacity for your program. And in the application, we will also look for the specific steps to select, procure, and integrate that added capacity. Competitive applications for this strand will propose equipment and infrastructure that are vital to sustain or expand a training program. An example would be if you propose to purchase a blower door to set up a program that can train weatherization professionals, since that type of equipment can be used beyond one cohort of trainees. So we are looking for proposals for equipment and infrastructure that has that kind of longevity that can sustain or expand your training program in the long term. So those are the overview of the different strands for the solicitation. Again, we really encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions. We have office hours starting tomorrow at 12 p.m. where you can just drop in anytime. No registration needed. You can join the office hours through the meeting link on our website, and the link will be included on these slides and will be provided to you hopefully by the end of the week. So in these office hours, you can ask questions and discuss your specific proposals. If you want to receive feedback before applying. And it's also a way to meet other potential applicants to form partnerships. And I also just want to note that we will host office hours leading up to the second deadline in May, and that will be posted on our website. Okay, now we're setting aside some time to answer any additional questions people may have.
So while the questions are being loaded into the chat, just to reemphasize for Strand C, there is a match requirement, but there's also space where you can propose alternative match levels. So the 1-to-1 and the 25% are the recommended match levels for private public, but you should also, if you have an alternative match suggestion, put that into your application.
Thanks, Edward. In the chat, there is a question from Frank. Is in regards to Strand C, who owns the equipment at the end of the grant period?
So, I mean, this is intended to be for a training program to grow their own capacity. So, you know, barring certain situations where there is a lease, in most funding purposes would be a direct purchase, you know, and then obviously the grantee would own the product at the end.
Thanks, Edward. And another question in the chat was, can the plan combine Strand C of funding with the technical trades and learning subsidy reimbursements?
So I believe you're referring to the technical trade internships, which if the Strand C funds are intended to be used for training programs. I think it really would depend on the use of the internship money, because they're related funds, but there's not anything excluding the use of that. It just comes down to whether the use case is competitive for the equipment you're picking up.
Yeah, Edward, I can further clarify. So we actually encourage grantees to always look at whether or not they can also take advantage of our various internship programs, whether it's the Clean Energy Internship Program or Technical Trades and Work and Learning. So certainly we would encourage both things to be happening. What you would want to be mindful of is you couldn't include, say, Technical Trades Internship Program into the funding picture of your grant proposal, because you can't sort of document funds that we're giving from another program as part of your budget for this program. But you could include it in a narrative to say that securing this equipment will create this additional training opportunity. We plan to take even fuller opportunity with regard to that training by engaging the Technical Trades Work and Learning Program as a strategy to work with employers. So that's the way in which you could think about potentially combining them.
Jennifer. And the final question I will field is from Paul. Would we apply for any or multiple strands? And so I think that I can answer this question, is that you can apply for multiple strands, and that would be encouraged.
I would expand on it a little bit, because I see several other questions related to that, about that and kind of expanding on what Jennifer also said. We do encourage you to blend and braid your funds across the strands, and also to external funding possibilities, which include other Mass CC grants. The one distinction is we want to see that the work is separate and distinct, meaning if you already receive funding from one of the other equity workforce funds, for example, to fund a certain cohort, and you're applying to this same grant, this current grant, to fund that same cohort, or something very, very similar related to that, it might be a difficult argument to make. But if it's that you're having a cohort where some of the participants would be target populations, equity target populations, and some of the populations would be other Mass residents who don't get funded under that, that could be a applicable combination of the funds to allow for you to carry that that training. And actually, so I do see we do have time, so we can answer a couple more questions. But I do see your question, Barry, about the diesel mechanics. I think that's a very specific sector-specific question. So generally in these informational webinars, these are designed to cover the RFP specific. We can go more deeply into your specific concept in an office hour. But what we would say is that similar to the question here about grading funds, the Strand C is strictly to pick up equipment and infrastructure. And when we say equipment infrastructure, it's equipment infrastructure needed to do the training, as opposed to like perishables or general office supplies. So if you needed, for example, a test rig engine that the trainees could work on, that's something that would qualify under Strand C. Whereas Strand B would actually cover the direct training of existing workers, so the incumbent workers. And in that sort of budget, you could make space for perishables like PPE and other supplies needed during training. Hopefully that gives you a start to think about how the Strand B is more for the direct training and Strand C is for the equipment needed. Okay, so as you've heard throughout, we do have office hours starting tomorrow, and they'll be going on throughout the month of December and January, leading up to the deadline. So we advise you to come in there. That's a non-recorded space where it's easier to discuss more specifics about individual applicant concepts. So we advise you to take advantage of that. So we'll be, oh, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, Anitra, you put a response in the chat about public universities. So public universities would fit into the 25% match criteria. So there is a recommended match still for public universities. Again, as we've mentioned a couple times, match levels are recommended and you can offer additional information.
Oh,
Sorry,
thanks. I
Court.
apologize for that.
No worries.
Okay, and for those of you who may have not seen it, there are links throughout the chat to the office hours. They will be in the PowerPoint once it's posted, and they're directly on the RFP website itself too as well. Due to the format of our Mass CC website, you do have to scroll down to the office hours section to access those links. So before we close up for today, just some quick reminders. As we said at the top of the hour, there are other funding opportunities. Can we go to the next slide, please? So right now there is another RFP open for professional services. It's a 7-strand RFP, so there's a lot of different opportunities in there. So if you're a type of consulting group or expert in workforce and feel like you could support various improvements to the internship programs that we run. In addition to that, there is a strand specific to the Climate Service Corps, which was part of the Climate Chiefs plan that was put out fairly recently. And there's also a clean energy workforce strategic plan that's in a different strand, which is looking for some strategic support as well. So those are 7 strands. We advise you to take a look at it and see if you have any interest in participating in that. And I think Anitra, you're going to cover. Yep.
Yeah, and so some more funding opportunities out of Mass CEC is the Clean Energy Internship Program, which is a spring session is currently open. This internship program will allow you to tap into a dedicated and enthusiastic workforce that's committed to learning about clean energy. We employ students across different majors and training programs. We reimburse you for 12 weeks of an intern's work. Employers can be reimbursed up to $18 an hour or up to a total of $4,230 per intern. And we encourage you to consider turning your interns into hires through this program. Another funding opportunity that is currently available is the Technical Trades and Work and Learning Program, where vocational high school after dark CTI students and participants of Mass CEC approved programs are eligible to participate. Participants receive valuable paid on-the-job training and work experience as they begin their careers. They get paid for work during the academic year and throughout the summer. And clean energy employers, including construction, will receive reimbursement for wages for up to $8,640 per participant through this program. And that there's a lot more information if you're interested. You can either go to our funding page on our website or follow this QR code. And last but not least, we have the Equity Workforce Training Equipment and Infrastructure. This grant is very similar to the climate critical one. However, we are more focused on alignment with our equity for this grant. It's up to $1.2 million. So you want to support individuals from priority populations with either career exploration or career pathway training. This also will be accessing ARPA funds for the equipment and infrastructure support. Match is recommended but not required for this. And that we have some priority deadlines for this grant, which is January 19th and May 1st. And I think that's it for our additional funding opportunities. And as a reminder, any questions regarding any of our RFPs, please send those to rfpworkforce@masscec.com. Thank you. So thank you all for coming. Again, any questions regarding any of the open RFPs under the workforce, please send your questions to rfpworkforce@masscec.com. If you have any additional questions about the type of grants you would like to apply for, please consider coming to office hours. And we look forward to seeing you there.